Welcome to Science, Health and Healing Library of Children's Health Core. I'm Dr. Majid Ali. The subject of this article is Children's Prediabetes, a Case Study. In April of 2012, I coined the term children's prediabetes, wrote an article, and posted it on the website of Children's Health Core, www.kids123.org. In a companion article on this encyclopedia, Children's Prediabetes, have you heard of it? I explain the reason why I introduced this term, because in my view it is crucial. Now I'm going to, in this segment, present a case study to put a human face to what I called children's pre-diabetes. A 13-year-old boy came to see me. The mother said, "He's a very loving child, a very good student. But in the last several months, he has changed. He has mood swings, he becomes irritable, his grades are dropping, his teachers are complaining, he's gaining weight, his skin appears rougher." Now, I did an insulin test. First, I will give you the values of the insulin profile of this child. I made this point many times on this encyclopedia that what I'm interested in is insulin values. The glucose values come along with it, but as far as I'm concerned, it is a serious mistake to rely on blood glucose values, except in emergencies. So here's the profile. Fasting insulin 9.4. A healthy child often will show you a fasting insulin of less than 2, which means it could be 1, it could be half. So this child's fasting insulin value is at least 5 times higher than what it should be. At 1 hour, his insulin is 22.5 units. A healthy child's peak insulin at 1 hour should actually be 13, 14, or 15. So he has too much insulin. At 2 hours, his insulin peaked at 23.6. Many healthy adults with perfectly normal glucose studies will show you a peak insulin value of 20, 21, 18. The lowest peak value in a very healthy 49-year-old woman that I've ever seen was actually, hard to believe, 12. And the highest insulin value that I've seen in a severely insulin toxic person with disabling neuropathy was 711. Most notably, at the end of 3 hours, his insulin was 19.4, where healthy people, even adults, let alone children, would have a 3-hour insulin value of down to 3 or 4, possibly less than 2. This is clearly a case of insulin toxicity. And this is clearly a case of childhood pre-diabetes. If you don't correct it, the next stage is going to be, they will do a blood test or A1C test and diagnose childhood diabetes type 2, and they will put him on diabetes drugs. And according to the recent study, he has 50% probability that within 3 years, he will need daily insulin injection. That is the tragedy, utterly avoidable tragedy of childhood prediabetes. In other words, childhood insulin toxicity. I might also give you his glucose values. As I said, I discard glucose values. But since it comes along with the insulin test, also it helps me expose the absurdity of relying on the blood sugar level, except in an emergency setting. So his fasting glucose was 83. See, if I had not ordered the insulin test, his pediatrician would have told him, oh, he's normal, blood test, his cholesterol. Maybe he would have spent more time, wasted more time on talking about cholesterol rather than talking about 83 glucose, because he will say it's normal. This is very interesting now. At 1 hour, his blood glucose level comes down to 54. Ordinarily, after fasting, when you give 75 grams of glucola, which is pure sugar, insulin rises because the blood sugar rises. Here, insulin did rise from 9.4 fasting value to 1 hour value of 22.5, but most notably, the blood sugar, rather than rise from 83 to, let's say, 120, 130, it actually came down to 54. I'll give you 10 seconds to figure out. Why would a child who's been given 75 grams of glucola, 1 hour after that, starting with a fasting value of 83, come down to a 1 value of 54? Dead clue to he is insulin toxic. The rate of insulin produced and released by the pancreas, the gland in the upper abdomen, lying behind the stomach, was so fast that rather than it allow the glucose to steadily and slowly go up to maybe 120, 130, it dropped it sharply down to 54. See, that's a part of the insulin toxicity and the abnormally increased rate of insulin release. I have never read or heard this from either a book of endocrinology or a pediatrician or an endocrinologist. Find me a reference in the literature of American Diabetic Association. And if you do, please send me an email. aliacademy7@gmail.com. Because whenever I make these statements based on my own knowledge, if indeed somebody else has documented these things, do me a favor, send me an email, I'll do another program, and together we will enhance the value of this no-cost, simple-to-read encyclopedia for people all over the world. Let's go back now to the curve. Now at 2 hours, his blood sugar is 59. Notice it is still lower than the fasting value of 83, which means that he has so much insulin, which continues to be released, that rather than allow the blood sugar, this is such an abnormal pattern of insulin release, and you will miss out completely if your pediatrician or endocrinologist is under the influence of the American Diabetic Association or Francis Collin of National Institutes of Health or the pseudoscientist of the Institute of Medicine or the bean counters at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Atlanta, Georgia. Now at 3rd hour, his blood sugar begins to rise. Give you the numbers again. 83, 54, 59, 69. I'm going to post this article again on www.kids123.org, and the title of this program would be Pediatric Prediabetes Case Study. So you will have time to look at this in print. You can also read my discussions of this. If you are a parent, in my judgment, there is no subject which will be more important to you. This is just as important as the grades in the school. Because you notice this 13-year-old who was a straight A student, now his grades are falling, his self-esteem is falling, he is losing weight, his skin is dry, he is irritable, and the pediatrician didn't bother to do the insulin test. Why? Because the professors who teach him, they don't want to learn about insulin. Why? Because the drug companies which pay them, they don't want them to learn about insulin. In so many ways, I keep coming back to this subject. I realize that some people may say, oh, this Dr. Ali is really obsessed. He's so angry. Well, I want to reassure you. My heart is blissful. My mind may be angry. So sometimes you should think I'm angry in the way I present this information. Please know that I suffer from, maybe I should invent a new diagnosis right now. The happy heart, angry mind syndrome. I think I'm going to do a segment on it. The happy heart, angry mind syndrome. Yes, I think I will do that, and I'll post it for my own amusement, and I hope you'll find it amusing. Our vision at this encyclopedia is to provide authentic information focused on problems of children, toxicities of food, environments, and thoughts. That is the mission of Children's Health Core, a nonprofit foundation that my wife and I started 7 years ago. And so far, this work we have funded all by ourselves. But the way you can contribute is forward this YouTube segment, Childhood Prediabetes, a case study, to your friends. Use email, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, any other social media, or just mention it to them in a telephone conversation. Until we meet again, may you be gracious, graceful, and generous in your spirit. Thank you for joining me. Thank you so much. Please, at least once, visit kids123.org. Thank you. Thank you so much.